the unemployment rate in South Africa has hit record levels in the third quarter of 2021. This is the highest rate in the country since 2008. The latest survey conducted by Open Dialogue shows that young South Africans spend an average of 1,300 rand per month looking for work. That's a total of 2,200 participants who took part in the survey. To talk more on this, we're joined by Associate Professor and Director of the Centre for Social Development in Africa at the University of Johannesburg, Professor Lauren Graham. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. This study points to a really concerning factor. 1,300 rand is a huge amount for somebody who doesn't even have a job.
Absolutely. And it's unclear from the report what that sample was made up of, but 6 years ago we conducted a similar survey with just under 2,000 young people. Those young people were predominantly young people coming from food insecure households with average incomes of about 527 rand per capita per month. And we were finding at that stage 6 years ago that they were spending about 930 rand a month. So those figures sound correct if we take into account inflation. And the reality is that that really is amongst young people who are in poor households, meaning that the choice is, do I go and look for work, or do we save that money for basic needs in the household?
Yeah, very, very concerning, because looking at survival versus a future that could increase the monthly income in a household is a very difficult situation to tackle. Let's talk about perhaps some of the elements that make up this amount. We're looking at transport, and what else covers what this amount would really speak to?
So in that report, they do break it down into transport, internet, and other costs. We certainly saw that in our study that the bulk of that cost was transport costs. And that's, at that time, they were spending about 550 rand a month on transport. And interestingly, or as you would expect, young people who were based in non-metro areas and rural areas were spending about 100 rand more per month than young people based in metro areas. And so the vulnerability that young people experience is compounded. So if you're further away from where economic opportunities are, you're spending more, and it makes it that much more difficult to break that cycle of poverty. The transport's definitely one of the biggest contributors, and one of the reasons for that is because young people go and hand deliver their CVs to various restaurants and shops and other offices where they think they might find work. The other cost is internet costs, and this is because of the high cost of data in this country, but also going to internet cafes or going to print CVs at internet cafes and the like, where they were charged quite high rates for that. And then there were some other costs. We did have a couple of incidents of bribery being requested, and things like having to buy an outfit for an interview. Those are other smaller costs that did come up in our study as well.
As we interacted with young people here on Newzroom Afrika and had conversations with them in the streets of the country, we found that the really operative word here was a disconnection. They feel that government does not have a connection with young people. They don't know what their needs are, and therefore they're unable to help. As we listened to the State of the Nation address yesterday, a lot of the reaction that's coming out of it is labor and economic experts warning President Cyril Ramaphosa to steer clear from the temptation of making these really bold statements about creating hundreds and thousands of jobs which are yet to materialize. What do you make of that?
So I do think there's two parts to your question. And one is the disconnect that young people feel, and that's certainly something that comes up in a lot of our qualitative research with young people. They feel excluded. And that's not because the government is not doing anything. We know that government has invested in things like the employment tax incentive. We have a public employment service in this country. We've got the SA Youth.Mobi platform. There's a lot happening. but this is often not reaching young people at the local level. They don't know about these opportunities, they don't know how to access them, and their experience at the local level is often they go, try to do something, and the door is closed on them and they don't know where to go next. So that disconnect, there's something missing between what the statements are and what the big programs are and how young people are receiving them at the local level. The other side of that is your question about sonar and not making these big promises. So in my reading of the sonar, the call was on private sector to be opening the door to allow young people their first foot in the door. And there was talk about extending the employment tax incentive and making it easier for businesses to access it, to encourage that. And then there were statements about what government was doing to create jobs. And there I heard about the Education Assistance Program, which has already created a number of work opportunities. And we can't see these as jobs. They're short-term, they're work opportunities. They're intended for young people to get some work experience as a stepping stone into longer job opportunities. And so those are really important mechanisms as well. It's not a one-size-fits-all. We have to have a plethora of interventions to address all of the various different aspects that drive the youth unemployment challenge in South Africa.
With the unemployment rate in South Africa edging closer to that very grim 35%, in terms of the perhaps psychological assessment of what young people are feeling in South Africa, I mean, we speak of 1,300 Rand on a monthly basis being needed to look for a job, but how are young people feeling about wanting to look for a job when there are so many obstacles and not many doors open?
Absolutely, and this is what we would call the hidden costs of work seeking. So on the one hand, we've got these financial costs that we can quantify, but there's definitely hidden costs. And we see that in the discouragement rates amongst young people, a number of young people who are giving up looking for work. We see it consistently in our qualitative data with young people where they're just really showing signs, not diagnosed, but showing signs of deep depression, of really feeling like, we expect a lot of young people. There's very little support out there for them or that they know how to access, yet they continue to knock on doors. They continue to access short-term training programs and try this and try that. And they get turned away so often, or they gain an opportunity and it's a short-lived opportunity and they don't know what to do next. And it's this constant feeling of what we hear in our qualitative data over and over again is, I just don't feel like I'm making any progress. And I don't know why I'm doing all of this. I just want to give up. And it's a completely understandable reaction. And so those mental health consequences, but we also see that playing out in family situations. Our data shows that young people, when they're wanting to access that 1,300 Rand, they're borrowing money from family members. And these are family members that are already constrained. And so it creates family friction as well. So there's those social costs of work seeking, these hidden costs along the way that we really haven't quantified and we really haven't got a finger on yet, but that are crucial to understand.
Absolutely. What can young people do to increase their chances of employment?
So I think one of the things about